Welcome to the High Adventure Scouting Podcast. This is the source for all things high adventure for scouts, scouters, and anyone else interested in promoting high adventure trips for our youth. You can find all kinds of great high adventure options for your scouts at highadventurescouting.com. We are constantly updating the list of cool trips, and we want your input on your best trip. Welcome, high adventure enthusiasts. We are excited, as always, to highlight a high adventure base on this edition of the High Adventure Scouting Podcast. Today, we are joined by Andrew Algier, Council Program Director and Director of Camp Buffalo Bill in Yellowstone High Adventure Outpost. Andrew, thanks for joining us today on the High Adventure Scouting Podcast.
Sure, happy to be here.
All right. Well, the purpose of this podcast is to give listeners a little more information about your program offerings. Sure, many outside the regional area don't know much about your programs. So just give me a quick overview of what you guys are doing out at the Yellowstone High Adventure Outpost, and we'll just kind of drill down from there, okay?
All right. So Yellowstone High Adventure Outpost was developed in 2010. That was our first summer as that program. And it was really to take advantage of all the amazing high adventure opportunities we have. Our base, which is also shared with Camp Buffalo Bill, it's 8 miles east of the east entrance of Yellowstone National Park. So it's in the Shoshone National Forest, but we're really kind of out there. Small camp, but we have a really big backyard. We're permitted for almost 3 million acres throughout the greater Yellowstone area. And so we have 3 miles of river frontage, which we use as kind of a springboard for our Whitewater program. We do backpacking trips in the forest. We do them in Yellowstone. We do flatwater kayaking in Yellowstone in a couple of spots, rock climbing, a little bit of caving. So it's really a wide variety. We also have the ability to do some winter programming. That's a pretty custom process at this point, but we like to try to take advantage of everything that's around us.
Well, that's great. You've just kind of thrown out all kinds of different programs you guys are offering: whitewater, backpacking, rock climbing, caving. Let's drill down into that and just, I guess, start with the most popular option that you guys that crews and troops and so on will come up to your area for.
All right. That would be our treks. So we have kind of the base, 5-day trek, whether that's in the forest or in the national park. We also can put together custom itineraries. Every once in a while, we'll have a crew that really wants something really rugged, or if they want something with longer mileage, we can just tack on additional days. So there's actually some options where you can start in the park and pop out in the forest. But those, you start typically on a Sunday, come into camp, get settled, checked in, and hit the ground running with packing your food, doing a shakedown, some of those base camp things that you'd see at most high adventure bases. From there, campfire, and then right after breakfast Monday morning, you are out the door to your trailhead. From there, you're out, sometimes pretty remotely. And you come back, you're back in time to get a shower and dinner on Friday. So with that, there's a huge variety of places we can go. Yellowstone itself is 2.2 million acres, and we can go any trail we want in there. We're a little limited as to backcountry campsite size. So we have to work with the backcountry office of the park to put together your itinerary for a crew. But there's so much of the park that 97% of the visitors don't see. Most people only get within about 30 minutes of a road in the park. And so we like to say that we're able to show them the other 97%.
Well, that's cool. Stuff that most people probably won't see in their lifetime. So
yeah, it's an incredible place. Some of the trips and the stories that come back off the trail is, I opened my tent. I was, next to a beach on the Yellowstone River down in the canyon, and there was a buffalo that walked by, and there was a bald eagle in the tree in front of me, and that's those kinds of experiences that we really like to offer.
Now, on these 5-day, basically these 5-day treks is what you're talking about. Is what do most of them? I know you said you can customize options, but what's the most popular thing that groups will come for? Is it just backpacking? Is it whitewater? Is it a combination of all these?
Well, backpacking, we certainly have more options. We can have up to 3 crews in the park per week, plus a group in the forest. Um, so we have a lot of groups that come to do trek. What we found the last couple of years is that a hybrid option is really popular. So we have what's called our rock and river program. So it's half rock climbing, half whitewater rafting. So if a group is not committed to do one or another for the week, they can do a little bit of both. We've had groups where they will do a shorter trek and then do a day of whitewater we can add on. Um, or if you really want to go custom, if your crew is up for a longer challenge um, and has the time to do it, we can put together what's called the surf and turf. And so that is a combination of kayaking in the park and backpacking. So that one typically you're looking at least 7 days, maybe 8 or 9, depending on your itinerary. But that really gets you deep in the park in some pretty unique spots.
Gosh, that sounds cool. So, are there options just for whitewater and just for backpacking? What's the layout of those?
Yeah. So our whitewater program, we have about 60 miles of river that we can play with. So 50 of that is right by camp. It's the North Fork of the Shoshone. And the rest, the other 10 or so miles, is actually right next to the city of Cody. So that's below Buffalo Bill Reservoir. So it's controlled flow. So that is raftable all summer. Whereas up by camp, the whitewater season starts the beginning of June. And we can run the full program through, usually it's the second week of July, about July 10th. After that, we start losing sections of river just because the snow melt is dropping off and the rocks start popping out. But Whitewater is a program that's set up so that you can come in with almost no experience and leave fairly competent. We focus on teaching the skills to be able to do it yourself in all of our programs. So it's not just come have fun and play. It is come learn, understand, so that you can really do this on your own once you're done.
Right, right. And on the let's say they took the whitewater option, are they camping out in the wilderness? Or are they coming back to base camp, or what's the layout of
Yeah.
most of
So
these
for
programs?
most of Whitewater, you're going to spend most of your nights back at our base camp. Um, we have worked on putting an overnight component in. So one of those nights on the river, there's a campsite that you can access both from the road and from the river, which is kind of a nice check-in point. So for our full program, we really like to use that option where you get kind of a solid 2 days with a night out on the river. So you get that full river experience.
Right. It's different everywhere. On some whitewater is you're taking everything with you. Some are you know staying back at base camp and then going out the next day. So um, the surf and turf. I want to jump into that because that sounds kind of cool. Also, the kayak and backpacking. You mentioned that's a little bit longer um, commitment. 7 to 9 days. You're out there quite a while. What's the typical? Is it half and half, or as far as kayaking and backpacking, or how does that usually work out?
Well, it's really up to the group.
Okay.
The two spots in the park where you can kayak are Yellowstone Lake itself and Shoshone and Lewis Lakes, which are connected by about a mile of river channel that's pretty shallow. Um, the hitch on those is that it's pretty remote. Um, they both have a long first day and last day to get to that first campsite and back to the trailhead. So typically, you're looking at about uh, a minimum of 3 nights of um, surf on that. Um, the turf could be 1, 2, 3 nights. We have options on itineraries throughout the park that, based on how long you want to come, we can fill in the rest.
Right.
But yeah, there's a little bit of a minimum of at least 3 nights kayaking, 4 or more if you really want to get deep, especially on Yellowstone Lake. It takes about 3 days of paddling to get to the far end of the lake.
Right. Okay. Cool. Um, is there a typical size of crew you guys like, a minimum or maximum for crews?
Um, there are. We're a little unique in that because we have to work through the backcountry office in Yellowstone. They're a great partner and they have gone out of their way to help us pull off itineraries. Um, we're limited by backcountry campsite maximums. So, like a Philmont cruise, typically you're looking at 11 people. Um, we send out 2 staff members with each crew, and unfortunately, that counts against the maximum. So, with some of our itineraries in the park, we can have 9 participants. That's youth and adults. Um, there are other spots in the park, like Lewis and Shoshone Lake, where the backcountry campsites are a maximum of 8 people. So we're looking at a crew of 6.
Mm-hmm.
So typically we're looking at least 4 people to a crew, and it could go up to 9. For rock climbing, we're looking at 10 people. For whitewater, because it's way more front country, we can do 12 at a time. So that's 12 people in a boat. We can do up to 4 boats. So we can hold a maximum of 24 people in that program at a time.
Okay. Now let's say you had a smaller group, uh, come in, a couple people. Are you able to kind of put those provisional campers into a bigger group and or two with the other groups, combine them together? How do you guys work that out if that happens?
Yeah. So it started out as just the high adventure wing of our summer camp. And so that was almost entirely provisional. So it's really typical to have a crew, um, not as much on the backpacking, but in our other programs where you'll have 2 or 3 scouts from this troop and 2 or 3 scouts from another troop, and we put them together. So, unless, but yeah, typically provisional groups are no problem.
Awesome. All right. We all know the major high adventure bases around the country, and they offer some awesome programs. Have you been searching for a cool alternative from your typical high adventure trip? As a scout leader, I want to give our scouts some great alternatives. You need to check out highadventurescouting.com. You'll find information on over 30 different council high adventure bases in 24 states. Maybe you're looking for a do-it-yourself option and need some ideas. Maybe you've taken a great trip and you want to share your good fortune with your fellow scouts and scouters. Just send us the details and we'll publish your trip. Whatever your interest, highadventurescouting.com is the one-stop shop for all things high adventure. That's highadventurescouting.com. Now this is kind of housed at Camp Buffalo Bill. So, are there groups, troops and cruiser troops coming to your location with younger scouts taking traditional program and then older scouts going on the high adventure program?
Yes, and that was a lot of the intent behind that design was that we could have a full troop come to camp. So everything from your first year camper program all the way through some pretty difficult and challenging high adventure. We like to try to make sure we have something for everybody in the scouting family.
Well, that's good. Not all high adventure bases have that, just because they don't have the opportunity or it's separate from their regular operations. So, um, as far as I ask all the time um, uh, where the scouts and scouters come from and geographically, and on top of that, you guys are a little bit further out. How do groups get to your location? I mean, do they fly? Do they drive? So I guess it's a two-part
Yeah,
question.
yeah, it's a great question. Because we're next to Yellowstone, we are a destination camp. We have scouts come from all over the country. We get frequently international groups that will come to us. Um, so there's a variety of ways to get to us. Um, a lot of groups will drive if it's within a day or two. So that's certainly an option. There are groups that choose to fly. On our website, we have some visitor resources on a page that will give you, here's all of the airports within 8 hours, with links. So it helps you plan your trip out a little bit. So some groups will go to a major airport like Salt Lake or Denver, and then they'll rent a vehicle and drive in. In fact, we have some groups that will choose the option of flying straight into Yellowstone Regional Airport in Cody, which is 50 minutes away, and we're able to do some shuttle service with that. Kind of the third group, and we see this there, especially in large, dense scouting areas like Texas. We'll have a troop, or sometimes we'll have multiple troops that'll join together, and they'll charter a bus. They find that it's a pretty affordable option transportation-wise, buys them much more flexibility. And so we can do groups that come in on bus as well. Unfortunately, we don't have very close rail service. So we don't see any troops that do the train thing. Philmont is lucky to have that as an option, but unfortunately we do not.
Great. Well, that's some of the bases that are further out. I always wonder, all right, how do you get there? What's the easiest way? So that kind of answers my question. Now, do you? I'm assuming with the kind of the way you work, I know there's some programs that will it would be cost per crew and per person. It sounds more like that yours is a kind of cost per person sort of option. Is that accurate?
Yes. We have there are two sides to our price structure. We have for the kind of that base experience, the 5 days of program with a day on each end of logistics and travel. We have a per person rate. This year we've kept our rate the same for the last 2 or 3 years. It's $465 per person. There's a discount if you get early payment by March 15th, $25 off per person. But if you're doing custom high adventure, or you want to tack extra days on, extra program days, that is, it's $75 per person per day.
Okay, that's good to know. Awesome. Now, as far as getting in and signing up, how early should units start signing up each year?
Our registration, our goal is to have the registration for the coming summer open June 1st. So we like to be at least a year out where units can register. At this point, typically we'll see most of our stuff start to really fill up early in the fall. If you want to have your full choice of what you want to do, I would say at least get your unit's name in there and reserve the minimum of spaces sometime before September. Once we hit December and then into the new year, things get pretty tight as far as spaces. And so if you have a lot of youth who want to do something together, that can be challenging.
Yeah. Well, especially with high adventure trips, you have to really plan far ahead. In our troop, we look 2 or 3 years ahead. All right, what are we going to do? How are we going to do it? Who's going to want to go? And it's so you really have to think of those things well ahead of time. So yeah, so we're used to that. Now, as far as that you have several different options and so on. So most of the time, as a part of a troop and high adventure coordinator for some of these trips, I'll ask, all right, what do we have to bring with us? Do we have to bring our tents? We assume a backpack of some sort, dry bags, that kind of stuff. What does your high adventure base provide, and what are some of the big things that they're going to have to bring with them?
All right. We don't have full availability, but we can certainly take care of most of our customers. Any technical equipment we provide. So if it's rock climbing or whitewater stuff, we got it covered. As far as trekking gear, backpack we can cover, tents we can cover, some sleeping bags, although I'd recommend bringing your own. If you're going to be more comfortable. Cooking equipment, we've got that covered. So really, if you show up and you have the clothes that you need, and a few other personal items, you're going to be set. We do have a lot of units where through the course of their shakedown hikes and everything, they have a gear set or a gear kit that they're really comfortable with, that they want to use, and that's totally fine. So, if they want to use their own stoves and pots, that's their choice, and we're more than happy to work with them on that.
Right. Okay. Yeah. The tent and some of the cooking equipment. That's usually the questions that I will have, as my experience, and that just allows troops to plan and crews to plan. All right, what do we need to have, and what can we count on being there at the camp? So. We've covered an awful lot. I think probably the last thing I'm curious about is what kind of staff do you have during the season generally for the high adventure?
Yeah, so we have kind of a high adventure program staff. It depends on how much we're offering in a year. Typically, we look at 5 crews at a time, so we're looking at a staff of 10 to 12 program folks plus a handful of logistics staff. So people to help drive you to your trailhead, pack your food, and take care of a lot of other odds and ends. But yeah, our staff, just like our customers, they come from all over the country. We've got some people who've come on who went through the program in the past, loved it. Everyone is at least 18. And we have a decent number of staff who are older than that. We have a lot of college students who are going into the outdoor recreation field, who are using it as an internship or a professional experience. So a lot of good folks from around the country who bring a lot of really good experience.
That's awesome. That sounds like a good crew of people to work on that. So, well, anything that we left out on that we haven't talked about that you want to highlight on the Yellowstone?
Yeah. So we're operating in public lands, Forest Service and Park Service lands. A lot of our terrain is rugged, and it's really remote. So it shocks a lot of people. When we had Philmont refugee crews in 2018, they were really prepped, and a lot of them had a lot of experience with Philmont, and to come to us where if you have a couple hours of off-trail travel to connect drainages, it was something that they were not prepared for. So we like to say that you get to see wilderness with a capital W when you come to us. Things are pretty wild. We have a lot of wildlife. Not uncommon to even see bears, moose, bison through our base camp area. So
Wow.
It's a unique experience, and you get to see a part of the country that it's hard to get to, and so the rewards are pretty great when you make the effort to get there.
Well, sounds like a cool option, and I've always wanted to spend time up in that part of the country. I've been to different places up there, but not out in the wilderness like this, and I'm going to have to make some time before I get too old to do that. So, well, Andrew, I want to thank you for joining us today on the High Adventure Scouting Podcast.
You're welcome. Thanks for having us.
No problem. Now, I want to thank Andrew Algier from the Yellowstone High Adventure Outpost for joining us today. You can get more information on their programs at campbuffalobill.com. That's campbuffalobill.com. Thanks for joining us today, and remember to tell your friends about this podcast. You can find us online at highadventurescouting.com, on Facebook or Instagram. If you have any questions or ideas for future podcasts, just email us at info@highadventurescouting.com. This podcast and website are independent and not affiliated with any youth organization. Happy High Adventure! This has been a production of High Adventure Resources.